Hello and welcome to my reading blog. This is an experiment to advertise my stories by me. I request you to please provide your comments and suggestions. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, events, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual person, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Story number 1. Tears. Part 1. Silence is the first word that comes to mind when we look at the narrow passage that runs from the village school towards these mountains, into the forest. It is not a well laid tar road, it is formed by the gravel and sand, yet it will not occur to us to call the road dusty, only silent. No vehicle would pass through this road, not since the Alpha occupation of the forest. No one dared or cared to pass this road. It has become the silent road. This silence was getting shattered now. It was the sound of metal against metal in a layer of oil and grease. The bicycle chains. Rudra's cycle was not a new one, but still he pedaled it with all his might to catch the two cycles in front of him. Droplets of tears were staying stagnant in his eyes, yet he did not blink. He did not want to lose them while blinking. I cannot lose those rascals. Those rascals. No, no, this is not the time. Spend energy to think or get angry. That comes later. He pedaled. His calf muscles were beginning to twitch and turn. He let out heavy gasp of through his mouth. They are about to reach the entrance of the forest. It will be difficult to trace them if they go deep into the forest. He glanced into the forest road quickly to analyze the paths that they may take if they enter the forest. He is sizing them up like a predator. Rudra tried to force the pace in the cycle. He assumed that they would split up as soon as they entered the forest. One of them, say prey number 1, would drive straight through, and the other, prey number 2, might try to abandon the cycle and take to the pine trees via foot. Rudra has to do quickly and has to do something. This road starts from the village high school and ends inside the forest somewhere. It is about 7 kilometers from the school to the start of the forest. The preys are about to enter into the forest. Rudra is about 3 minutes behind them. He pedaled on. The preys enter the forest and disappeared slightly from Rudra's sight. He needs to think and act fast. He pedaled on. As he entered into the forest, he saw an abandoned cycle. As expected, they had decided to split up. He braked near the abandoned cycle. He glanced right. He could see prey number 2 running. He looked straight. Prey number 1 was still pedaling into the road. He decided. He got down from the cycle and picked up a stone half the size of his fist, aimed at the occipital of prey number 2's skull, using his javelin throw skills, and threw. Bullseye! The stone hit the prey right on the occipital. The sound was blunt, like the clash of wooden planks at the start of a running race. The prey fell on the spot and was motionless. Rudra was satisfied the prey cannot move. He picked up his cycle and started to pursue prey number 1. His calf muscles would not cooperate. To have pedaled continuously for 7 kilometers and to break down and to bring down prey number 2 and start again was too much for it. He pressed on. The sun was at its peak. He was sweating through his body. He pedaled. After pedaling for about 5 minutes, he could see prey number 1 pedaling on his cycle. That sight gave him some energy. He pedaled. Again, he had to analyze his options quickly as the road was about to end. He expected prey number 1 to abandon his cycle and run into the forest. Rudra has to follow him. But after some distance into the forest, Alpha territory begins, and it is next to impossible to catch him. As he was analyzing this, prey number one abandoned his cycle and started running. Rudra thought of attacking him with another stone, but this time the distance is more. He pedaled. Exactly 4 minutes after prey number one abandoned his cycle, Rudra reached the spot and left his cycle and started running. He was barefooted and had to be careful for the thorns. He trusted his instincts. He had to. He ran. Prey number one turned back slightly to glance at Rudra as he ran. Rudra was glad. This glance would help him gain some seconds. He ran. Prey number one must have realized that he might lose the foot race, so he decided to take a right turn. This not only takes him into the forest but also away from the village. This concerned Rudra as he turned. He ran. He thought of stone attack of prey number two must have alerted prey number one. He must innovate and innovate quickly. He ran. Rudra suddenly realized something and took a slight left deviation. He ran. Prey number one did a second glance at Rudra and his path took a slight right deviation involuntarily. Craving for symmetry is deeply rooted into human's DNA. He made a third glance. Rudra was again running on his left. He made another right deviation. Rudra smiled slightly. His trap is working. He ran. Despite his pain, he is beginning to like this game. As he was thinking this, prey number one slipped slightly and recovered. He ran. For every glance and the corresponding deviation in the path, Rudra gained valuable milliseconds. This slip is jackpot. He ran. He went for his master stroke. He tried to leap and grab the nearest branch. His goal is to leap at it so hard that it would break and he would get down and continue his running. This would minimize the time that he would lose. He ran. He planted his foot on the root and leapt. He caught hold of the branch and pulled with all his might. The branch broke. As he was coming down, his shirt sleeve was locked with the big bark of the tree and jerked him. He came down as his shirt tore. His body screeched with the bark. A rush of pain ripped through his right side of his body, through his spine. He ran. He had to. Only a few more meters. Prey number one heard Rudra screeching on the tree, but he did not want to glance back. This is the time to gain on Rudra. As he was running, he saw the bypass. Those deviations had forced him into the direction of the bypass road. He is being manipulated. He cursed himself. He was also slightly surprised. All those trainings in the forest meant nothing in front of panic. He cursed again, being outsmarted by this stupid schoolboy. He had to glance back to see Rudra's position. He glanced back. Rudra's teared flesh was burning. He ran. Prey number one glanced back. Rudra knew that the prey would have guessed the trap. He ran. He had to keep on. Just a little more time. The bypass would expose the prey totally. He ran. The prey had to think. He surveyed the area. Rudra had covered the path into the forest. Trying to run into the forest would be a big risk of getting caught. The sound of stone was still fresh in his mind. The bypass would expose him totally. He still had his handmade pistol, but it is empty and had to be reloaded. He needed a shelter and couple of minutes to reload. This would have the higher status quo. The rock at the other end of the bypass road looked perfect. Rudra saw that the prey was now running directly towards the road. He ran. A slight skepticism crept into him. He ran. The prey crossed the road and hid behind the rock. This is not good. He ran towards the road. End of part 1. Part 0. Rudra listened the school bell ring as he was inhaling his last puff of his cigarette. There is still time. He was never in time for school. After 30 minutes, he gradually walked towards the classroom, 12th standard. There's nothing unusual in his school days. Enter the class late, sit in the last bench, make a joke or prank, get scolded, and sent out of the class. Today was going to be nothing new either. The teachers don't care about him anymore. Mutual feelings, he guessed. Apart from attendance, there was not much in the class anyway. None of the teachers taught. Maths teacher copied down the example problem from the book and gave them the rest of the problems as self-study. Some of the teachers merely read the book to the class. Some of the students read the book for a change in some other classes. Other teachers simply did not come to the class. He walked near the class. He glanced into the window of the class and was surprised. Unlike the usual dhoti-clad teacher, he saw a dark man in pants and a tucked-in white shirt. For the first time, he saw scribbling on the board. He walked near the class. The teacher was saying Einstein was a shy person. Also, he did not have anyone to sponsor his research. It was war time, and all money was devoted to finding new weapons and a theory to explain the motion of light was not very attractive. It was at this time the teacher stopped. Rudra was entering at the door and glanced at the teacher. Yes? Late for the class? Asked the teacher. Yes, sir, said Rudra. The reason? Asked the teacher. Rudra was taken aback. This is the first time anyone has asked the reason. Bus late, said Rudra. The teacher glanced at him and said, Fine, enter. Let this be the last time. Rudra went in and occupied his usual position. The teacher pointed his finger at Rudra and said, New rule in my class. Latecomers are to sit in the front. Rudra stared and got up and came to the front row. The teacher smiled slightly and continued with the class. He was starting the theory of relativity. Somehow the whole class was into it. Rudra could sense that they were able to follow the subject. He could not believe this. This is the first time such a thing has happened in his school. Even he could not help but to copy the equations into his notebook. Somehow he felt happy, relieved. The period ended and the teacher walked out. Next was chemistry. After 5 minutes, the students realized that it was going to be a free period. Rudra stayed in the first bench and started a conversation with Shiva, the class geek. Who's this new teacher? Asked Rudra. His name is Ashoka. He got transferred from Shimoga, said Shiva. Why? Asked Rudra. He was requested by our headmaster. Shimoga High School won the NCC award for the best school last year. Ashok sir was the main reason. He was the NCC Scoutmaster and has a 100% pass record so far. So our headmaster wrote a letter and requested him to join us, said Shiva. Mm-hmm, said Rudra. Also, he has written 2 books. He is part of the Communist Party and was instrumental in rehabilitating child soldiers from the Maoist movement. Finally, we have someone who can teach us, said Shiva with a bit of relief. Rudra felt pleased. A teacher at last. He looked out of the window and saw Ashok sir walking towards the rest room. The teacher stopped and looked at the main gate and walked to there. There were 2 persons standing. They were looking slightly boyish. Rudra got up and walked out of the class. He wanted to talk to the teacher. The teacher was walking towards the boyish persons. Rudra was following slowly. The teacher and the boyish figure started a conversation. It was then one of the persons took a handmade gun, pointed at the teacher, and shot. Before Rudra could comprehend what had happened, the teacher fell with a thud. The person who shot the teacher pulled a flag and shouted some slogan, grabbed the nearest bicycle and started pedaling. His companion followed suit. Rudra ran towards the teacher. There was a pool of blood. The teacher lay there, their supposed guide, supposed scoutmaster, supposed teacher. The one period physics sir lay there. Part of his face was buried in blood. The other half bore a surprised look. Rudra's lower lip shivered. Droplet of tears were on the brink of his eye. He looked up and saw those persons pedaling onto the road. He bit his lip, looked around and saw a ladybird cycle. He pulled the cycle and started pedaling into the road. The silent road. How can they do that to my teacher? How the hell could they do that? He pedaled. End of part 0. Part 2. Rudra dropped the stick that he had in his hand. Things have taken a new turn. Why is Prevan hiding behind the rock? He did not cross the road. He bent down slowly without taking his glance from the rock. Grabbed the nearby stone. Prevan stood up from behind the rock with a handgun. Rudra became alerted. Now, this is a handgun. Aiming with this gun is not that easy. He made zigzag dances, gripping the stone in his hand. Prevan went ahead and fired. It missed. There is only one more shot. He had to make it count. Brought his left hand and hold the right wrist and tried to aim. Prevan had to bring in all his training to do this. Rudra was still zigzagging. He had to do something, and quickly. He may not get lucky next time. This was when he heard roars on the side of the road. He forced hard not to stop zigzagging and not to remove his glance from the prey. Before the prey could not control his instinct and turned, Rudra took his shot at Prevan, threw the stone, aiming for his temple. Bullseye again. The prey fell down. Now Rudra turned and he saw Shiva with some villagers. Prevan was lying on the road. Rudra sat on the road, bent down, saw his wound, pressed hard on the wound to arrest the blood, and started to cry. The end. Thanks for listening to this, dear readers. Please leave your comment.